Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Full Scottish Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host Jay Allen, and I'd once again just like to start off by thanking everybody who supported the first episode of the show. I received a massive amount of messages from everybody and comments from people on social media and that who were very supportive of the podcast, and it really does mean the world to us that you've managed to watch this and take some time out of your busy schedules to support it. It's been much appreciated. So for this episode, I'll be diving back into the West of Scotland Football League again, but this time instead of the third division, it will be in the Premier Division with Clydebank Football Club. My guest for this episode will be David Brockett, who is the club's media officer and is also in the board of directors as well for the club. Now, I've brought on David for this episode of the podcast because I'd like to touch on a subject which I think is very important to myself, and that is the inclusion of people with disabilities within Scottish football. Now, I first met David when I went to a Troon versus Clydebank game, the club, and I hadn't met him before that, but when I went there for the first game, it was absolutely brilliant to see how well received he was by the club. Everybody really adored him about the place. Everybody was very eager to talk to him and hear his opinions, and I felt very inspired by it as well. The fact that he didn't seem to let this bother him. He's let his disability get on top of him, and he was just raring to go and do everything for the club that he loved. So I'm hoping in this episode that by speaking to David about his disability and his experiences within Scottish football, it maybe inspire other people who have disabilities that feel as if they're maybe left out of the game and don't feel that they can get included, or maybe somebody who's struggling to get involved with the game because their confidence is quite low and they maybe don't feel as if they're good enough to aspire to higher levels within the game. So I would appreciate it that if you do know anybody that is maybe struggling with it or would like to go a career in Scottish football that maybe has a disability and feels held back, hopefully you could get this episode out to them and maybe look at David's work within Scottish football, which will hopefully be an inspiration to get more people involved with the game. I'm also hoping that by discussing this that there may be other people within the West of Scotland League and other leagues within Scottish football maybe look at what David's saying within the podcast and can actually start to consider whether their facilities within the club are suitable to include disabled people, as they may be excluding other fans out with the club, and hopefully that they could maybe think about reinvesting a lot of their money into facilities for the disabled, maybe a little bit less into the players, and hopefully more to try and get more fans included that maybe feel as if they are incapable of going to the games due to the lack of facilities. I won't say too much more, as David has quite a lot to say about it himself within the podcast, but we will be talking about his experiences with his disability, its impact that it's had on his career, and we'll also just be discussing a bit about Clydebank's upcoming season and how they've been so far. But I've spoken enough about it, so here is my interview with Clydebank's David Brockett. So David, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. How you been doing, mate?
Yeah, all good, thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So I just wanted to start off the podcast by obviously discussing your disability and its the impact that it's had on you throughout your life so far. So could you start off by just giving us a little bit of an insight into your disability and what it was like growing up with it?
Yeah, of course. Well, I was born with a condition called spina bifida, which basically means that my spine didn't fuse properly when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So basically means that my legs don't work, and I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I always kind of feel that I've been kind of lucky with being born with it, so it's not ever something that I've had to adapt. I've never lost anything that I've then had to adapt to, so it's kind of all I've ever known. So that's pretty much where that went.
Oh, decent. No, thanks very much for saying that, mate. But did you ever feel that your disability had limited you in any way when it came to getting involved within Scottish football at a young age or at any point in your life?
In all honesty, probably not. And again, I feel really fortunate about that. I don't know whether that's just the people that I've had around me or kind of the attitude that I've been kind of brought up with, whether it's been sort of having that maybe self-deprecating sense of humour where it's never really been a problem, to be honest. Maybe I've been sort of defensive in the sense that I've brought it up before anyone else has had the opportunity to do it or whatever. So no, I've been very lucky and had a really good experience so far.
Uh-huh. No, that's great to hear. And as I said to you before the podcast as well, I really want to try and get the message across that to people that want to get involved with any sort of football, never mind Scottish alone, that it shouldn't have to hold you back at all, and that there is ways that everybody can get involved with the game. And obviously meeting yourself at that with my first game at Clydebank Troon, it was absolutely brilliant to see that nothing had held you back, and that it was everybody was just loved you at the club and how much of a help that you were. So now going on to your current career, when did you decide that you wanted to become a journalist for Scottish football and that this was the career path that you were going to take?
I mean, it's something I've always been interested in terms of like media and journalism. I started doing those things at school probably, like there was a sort of press and media club that we used to do. Ultimately didn't get the grades to go to uni to do journalism from school. So I ended up going to uni the first time round to study marketing. Realised fairly quickly that wasn't going to be for me sort of long term. So I dropped out of there, and I kind of knew I wanted to give journalism a go. That was when I sort of took a year out and kind of used that to build up my portfolio of work experience and managed to get back into uni again, kind of on the work experience side of things. So it was probably something that I wanted to do when I was younger. Didn't think it would happen, and then obviously sort of later on it sort of transpired that I've been able to get into it.
Right. Can I also just ask you as well, mate, what was it that really interested you from a young age about the journalism side of it and media and that as well, and just made you really want to go and do it going forward?
I was probably nosy as a kid. probably like knowing things. And being sort of quizzical and asking the questions, and obviously if you can end up making a career at that, then why not?
I completely agree, mate. But just before I move on to your kind of time working as well, I was just wondering, do you have any advice for anybody who actually may be struggling a bit with their disability and trying to decide which path that they want to take going forward?
I mean, I would say that's entirely normal. So, like, it's all right to feel that. I mean, I think there's going to be plenty of times where it feels quite a scary thing to kind of want to know where you fit in, where life's going to go, where your career's going to go because of it. And probably knowing that is all right is probably the first kind of step in it. Probably one thing I didn't learn until my 20s probably was the kind of different models of disability and whatnot. I'd say a lot of people think that you're kind of disabled by like the condition that I've got and because I use a wheelchair, rather than thinking of, well, if the rest of the world was actually accessible and was sort of built towards accessibility, then my legs not working wouldn't actually be the problem, if that makes sense. I think realising that you're not the problem quite early on is a kind of positive kind of attitude to have. But I would say just normalise it being okay to feel a bit rubbish about it sometimes, because you're not always going to be fine and dandy about your situation, but realising that it's not just you that's the problem is probably a good thing to...
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much, and hopefully that's of advice is some help to some people out there who may be struggling. So obviously now I'd like to just go on and discuss a bit about some of your previous work life out with your time at Clydebank. I'll just touch on it a bit slightly, because I've got plenty more about Clydebank that I'd actually like to talk about in detail. But you've previously had work experience in different media sectors in journalism within the SPFL Development League, Youth Football Scotland, Glasgow Live, Sky Sports News, and along with a huge list of local and national newspapers as well. How was your experience working with these different organisations, and how did that prepare for you for everything that was to come at Clydebank?
I mean, in general, I think you pick up different things at sort of every place you kind of get in it, to be honest. Probably the biggest thing's building up relationships. I would say that's been the sort of key theme throughout all those ones that you've just kind of listed there, to be honest. I mean, I started off doing voluntary work for Youth Football Scotland. That was in the year that I'd said I'd sort of dropped out of uni the first time round. That then led to a short-term job over COVID. So kind of keeping those relationships kind of building over that time has probably been the kind of key thing. Some of the work I do just now is because of someone I met through doing the Development League as well, so you kind of never really know where these connections are going to lead to. So I'd say that's probably been the biggest thing, being able to network and being able to build connections everywhere, and that's going to stand you in good stead, especially for sort of media and journalism.
So just as well, have you ever felt that it was a kind of struggle at times when you were jumping from kind of maybe job to job, doing all these different things, and did it get quite frustrating at any points, or as you said, did it become easier by those that you were networking with, meeting a wider group of people that made it a lot easier for yourself?
I mean, the vast majority of those were really early on in terms of being at uni, so it was all about building up experience and trying to add to my work experience rather than it being a sort of job at that point. So I wouldn't say I was frustrated at that point. I think I always saw that as a sort of stepping stone to meet new people and to get sort of more by-lanes under my belt and kind of use it sort of gradually to build up my experience.
So out of all these places, would you recommend them to other people who are interested in working within Scottish football journalism?
To be honest, I think anywhere you can get experience, anywhere you can get your sort of foot in the door is going to be massive. Probably the great thing about the kind of world that we live in just now is that everybody's a publisher. So you don't even need to wait for an opportunity at one of these sort of companies. If you've got a blog, if you've got a TikTok, if you've got an Instagram page, if you're uploading, if you're showing that this is the career that you want to go down, if you're doing it off your own back, rather than just waiting in like a week's work experience somewhere, if you can show that you're kind of self-taught and if you're wanting to do it that much that you've went out off your own back and doing it, I think that's going to be really valuable as well. But obviously, the people you meet in these places is also really important. But any of those, any opportunity you can get, just don't sort of put it down. Just try and make the most of what you get.
So you were talking there obviously as well about the kind of social media pages and for portfolios and that. Where did you yourself put all your work and all that in a portfolio, or did you have like a social media page yourself that you had everything put on that was easy for them to reference?
I think I ended up using, I think it was something called Wakelet.
Right.
It was a kind of digital wallet type thing I ended up using at one point. And again, because I know we'll probably touch on it at some point, but doing stuff for Clydebank, it was already out there, so I was able to then either retweet it or pull it into my LinkedIn or whatever and say, well, this is what the club have done. I was behind this, and this, and being able to kind of use that as a point of reference.
No, perfect. Thanks again for that, mate. I also want to talk about the Homeless World Cup that I'm aware that you worked at for the media team, and that was in Glasgow in 2016 and Oslo in 2017. Can you please just give us a bit of an insight about what it was like to experience working at this tournament and why we should kind of be supporting events such as this around the country and the world?
Honestly, it's an incredible tournament, and it's probably a strange one because when the advert came out, again, still at uni, trying to get experience, I used it, or I went into it, I should say, purely for the experience of it, like thinking it was going to be something just for the portfolio. But it's honestly such a magical tournament. I mean, it's something that it kind of gets under your skin, which I don't think anyone really expects when they go into it. But it's something that is a prime example of how you can use football for good, for changing lives, for saving lives in a lot of ways. So I probably selfishly went into it thinking this will be good for some stories, not realising the kind of connections you're going to make. And honestly, it's an incredible tournament with some incredible people that work at it, volunteer at it. It's fantastic.
No, it does seem like an absolutely amazing tournament. Myself, I didn't really find out about it too much until I kind of started researching more into it recently, when it's kind of started to more get a limelight, I think, in social media and that as well. And I said that a lot of people that I've been reading into about it have said this exact same as you, that it's brilliant and they've just went about it wanting to hear stories, but they've met so many more amazing people in that as well that actually want to volunteer at all these events and give up their hard time for it as well. So it's great to hear you had a great experience with that. And for those of you who are interested in keeping up to date with the upcoming 2024 Homeless World Cup, it's going to be held in South Korea in October of this year. You can find the latest news and support this incredible event at www.homelessworldcup.org. And while we're also discussing the subject of disabilities as well, for anyone who's interested or might know of anybody who would like to get involved with Scottish football in any way, or who struggles with a disability but haven't found a way to feel included and get involved themselves, you can find details on football opportunities for those living with a wide range of conditions at www.scottishparafootball.org.uk. I'll put these in the link in the bio of my social media, that as well, and the link of the podcast itself. Now, David, I'd like to actually talk about your role within Clydebank in that currently as well. So you took up the role of media officer within Clydebank in 2015, and you've been a massive part of the club ever since, and that's to say the least anyway. Can you inform us what the role of a media officer actually entails and how much work and time actually goes into that role?
I mean, as you say, 2015, that probably explains the hair loss and the weight gain. But essentially what it means is I take to do with this, all the sort of media and communication side of things for the club. So anything that kind of comes out kind of comes through me, essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I said to you off camera as well, I've been a Clydebank fan for 20 years or something like that now. So I initially had the interest, as we kind of spoke about, like media, journalism, photography, it was at that point. Yeah. I started taking pictures, got a wee bit more involved. Yeah. And it's been that sort of gradual process to the point we're at now. It does take up quite a lot of time. Like you probably don't realise when you go into it that it's going to take over your life a wee bit. Whether that's kind of prepping graphics or updating this, that and the next thing. But when you're doing something like that for the club that you support, then it doesn't feel too bad.
Well, that's it. As I saying I've been at Troon in that as well, helping working out there as well. And when I came to see yourselves and other teams about in the junior leagues as well, I didn't actually realise how much work was actually going into it as well, and how much time people were giving up as well. Just because when I was young, I just used to think, it's at the football, the biggest level, everybody gets paid to do every job, loads of money, it's easy, but don't realise actually how much time that you give up and how much junior clubs rely on volunteering and that as well. Also, I just want to talk about the Bankies TV as well, because I heard that you were a massive part in actually creating that itself, and that's just to provide the supporters with all the live stream and commentary, all your home games as well. So I've actually only really kind of watched the highlights side of it as well when I've just been on YouTube. Usually at weekends, just sitting going through every highlights package I can sit and watch. But it's absolutely brilliant, the quality of the highlights as well. You give a very detailed commentary and that as well throughout the games, and it's just I've not really seen a lot of teams at this level, junior level as well, that have got such a high quality package as yourself. But do you take great pride in all the work that you've done with Bankies TV, and what are your hopes for it in the future as you progress?
I mean, Paul Cummins has to take a lot of credit for Bankies TV. He was the driving force behind it, and still is. I mean, we initially set it up during COVID. Obviously, everyone was locked out, so we had to try and find a way of keeping people connected with the club. So that was our first sort of foray into it, was finding a way to broadcast the games. As I say, Paul was the sort of main man behind that. I was just doing a wee bit of the technical side of things. So we got the camera, I think the first game we didn't have any scoreboard, we had no sort of technical side to it at all. I think it was just a live stream on YouTube, tethered to my phone. But gradually, bit by bit, we've kind of improved it. We've got the cabling, we've got the new gantry all set up, and it's something that we as a club really are proud of. We've managed to get a sponsor for it this year as well, so it's kind of paying for itself as well now. So it's been a gradual process, but it's been a good one.
No, that's great to hear, mate. Just another question on the topic of that as well. Do you feel like there's obviously bigger... I was talking to Dino about this in the last podcast as well, that when I came to that Troon Clydebank game, I was very impressed with the home support and that as well. Because at first I thought that maybe a lot of teams would rely on the likes of Rangers Celtic games being off to get attendances, or even the likes of local ones like Kilmarnock for ourselves and that as well. But when I came there, I was really surprised and happy to see it such a big turnout, even with those style of games on as well. But would you say that having Bankies TV, a lot of people use that now rather than coming to games, or have you seen no difference in attendance, probably increased maybe over the period?
That was something we were worried about after COVID. Obviously, people were used to watching it in the house, and you're thinking, if when the winter comes in, are people going to bother? Then obviously, you'd probably be aware of the blackout for the English teams,
Yeah.
so we can't broadcast it inside the UK on a Saturday, like between those sort of block towers and stuff. But we didn't see a drop off like after COVID, which was, I think we were probably a bit surprised.
Oh.
But again, people had been stuck in the house for so long, they just wanted that sort of connection of live football back, I think. So I know we were really lucky that we got to provide the service, but we then didn't see a sort of consequence of it, like on the negative side. So no, it's been good.
No, that's brilliant to hear, and honestly, I really wish you the best of luck with that going forward as well, because I'll definitely be paying for it myself now to try and actually watch a game and see for it for myself. So I'd also like to talk about that in October 2020, Clydebank announced that you were actually going to take your place within the club's board of directors. How did this opportunity come about for you, and was it a no-brainer to actually take your place on the board of directors alongside them?
I mean, that was a pretty sort of strange but cool moment. As I said, I'd been helping out in the media side of things since about 2015, as you said. But basically being co-opted at that point basically meant on a practical level I was kind of across everything that was happening. So it wasn't as if there was going to be like a discussion with the board and then it was being filtered down to me at a later date. I was kind of involved in that sort of process.
Yeah.
And that kind of coincided with everything happening just after COVID with the Scottish FA licensing and then the entry into the Scottish Cup. So it's been a good time to sort of join and kick on for there.
And obviously you became a director on the board, the board of directors during the actual COVID pandemic itself. Was that a tough time to really be becoming on the board, or did you really see no difference in that, or it changed your opinions anyway of it?
As I said, probably with the Bankies TV, that was probably why I was brought on, just to try and help kind of tick it over and stuff. I hadn't had experience of being on the board beforehand, so I didn't know what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
So I was probably thrown in at the deep end a bit. But I've sort of managed to make it work, and it'll be sort of 4 years coming up.
That's crazy to think that because I actually remember seeing that at the time. I was like, I can't believe that was 4 years ago that actually happened. But I'd also like to talk about another thing that happened in 2020, and it was an initiative that Clydebank had, that they announced that they were going to be fundraising £15,000 to try and make some major improvements to the stadium itself, to try and comply with the SFA pyramid and to provide disabled supporters like yourself with some facilities to improve your overall matchday experience. The improvements actually included disabled toilets, suitable cover for disabled fans, medical facilities and a dressing room for the match officials. First of all, better ask, were the club actually able to raise that £15,000 and fully develop everything that they'd said they were up to?
Yeah, we were, thankfully. And to be fair, that was long overdue for us. It was. And that's probably something I would say about the sort of pyramid side of things as a whole. The ability to apply for a licence was probably the kind of instigator for a lot of clubs to kind of realise that they needed to do it for the licence, but also it's something that they should have had even before that. So obviously them needing to sort of comply, put a greater emphasis on them putting in the facilities, which is obviously only going to be a good thing and has made a difference for a lot of people.
So just touching on the actual licensing yourself, you were discussing about there. Me and Dino in the last episode were talking about how Beath have won the Premier Division in the West of Scotland the last 2 years running, but have actually failed to get promoted into the Lowland League due to not meeting certain licensing requirements. Is there anything that Clydebank still have to do to try and meet those requirements? Because I know that you'll be up there hoping and fighting to try and get promotion this season.
Certainly hoping so. Certainly hoping to be anyway. In terms of getting into the playoff for the Lowland League, we'll be okay in that one. We recently just had our licensing audit and came through that okay. It would then be if we were to be into the Lowland and looking to progress up the way again. I think you're now going to need a bronze licence rather than an entry one to get promoted into the SPFL. So that will come with different things. I think it's maybe seating or covered seating and a club doctor on site at home games and stuff. So that'll come with its own challenges, but we'll cross that bridge hopefully when we come to it.
Fingers crossed that you've managed to at least be pushing up there come the end of the season. But also just talking about the facilities and that the club are introducing. How proud are you of the club that they were actually introducing these facilities to try and make your experience and other disabled fans within the club much more enjoyable?
Yeah, 100%. And as I say, I have to also be critical and say that is long overdue for like across the board, like ourselves included. But you can see like tangibly it's opened the club up to a totally new, diverse audience. I mean, we've got season ticket holders that we didn't have a couple of years ago with disabilities. As I say, it's a whole new section of the community that you're now able to welcome comfortably with toilets and cover when no doubt it's raining in a for July, August, which is it's still teeming. So I know you're actually seeing the benefits of it already, that people are sort of supporting us because we've got everything in place.
No, it's great to hear that it's been brilliant. Like, it's really worked out for yourselves as well, because I've been to quite a lot of grounds around the junior level and that as well, and I have been, obviously after meeting yourself and that, I started to think a little bit more about is this correct facilities in place for people such as yourself to actually attend the games. And when you're going about it, it doesn't seem like a lot of clubs at like certain levels have those facilities in place. So it's great that even a club like yourselves have it though. But just talking on that, actually, I know that we've just discussed that Clydebank's got them all in, but do you think that there's actually enough teams within the leagues going from West of Scotland Premier Division to the 4th Division that actually provide enough support for disabled people like yourself, whether that be for just during like working yourself when you're doing your reporting, or maybe just going to the game to just enjoy watching your team?
I mean, from a work point of view, it can be quite difficult. Like, I can't get away from that. I mean, there's probably not that many disabled football writers that I'm aware of anyway. And I think it's safe to say that most football grounds haven't been built with kind of any notion of that in mind. So obviously, like, from a media point of view, if you're going to a game, like, reporting on it, your sort of media colleagues can go up to the press box where it's dry, where they've got a seat, they've got a desk, they've got Wi-Fi. You'll probably be down the front somewhere where they'll stick you, which is no fault of anyone working at the club, because 9 times out of 10 they're really accommodating and really lovely. But it can make it difficult if I'm filing a match report on the whistle at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of down myself type thing. It can make it difficult, but as I say, if clubs know you're coming, they'll probably make it as easy as they possibly can for you. In terms of actually just feeling it as a fan, that's probably been a frustration in the last few years, where, I mean, it's no secret the investment in some teams in the league have been astronomical. You're seeing sort of big wages and big transfer fees paid for people, and you realise that they're not spending that on the infrastructure, where you can't go to the toilet, but they're happy to pay someone quite a big wage. That can be frustrating. But I think slowly but surely we're getting there, and people are seeing the benefits of investing in the facilities if they're then recouping it with people coming through the gate.
No, hopefully more clubs continue to invest in that as well, in the facilities. As you're saying, they're paying a lot of money for certain players, and I've never actually thought about it from that perspective, and how that must be really frustrating for yourself when they are doing that. But obviously you were just talking about it kind of being frustrating there. Is that ever actually been off-putting for you, to like, or demotivating maybe, to actually come to your work when you sit and go, oh no, I know that I need to go to this ground, I've not got great facilities, the weather's miserable, I might not have the decent cover available to try and get through this? Or is it just something you just think, oh well, just get used to it and move on with it?
It's better than having a real job. It's something that can be frustrating, but I would say if you're going to be put off by something that you can't change, I can't change my disability, I can't change the way things are set up. If I was going to be put off by that, I would leave the house. Like, if I was going to be put off by stuff, if it's going to be difficult, you do kind of get used to it. You get used to problem solving. You used to sort of finding a way around things.
No, it's great. It doesn't really demotivate you at all in any way, and you just come in and get on with it. So, great to hear, mate. But just wondering, before I...
Remind me of this in January when it's raining.
But just before I move on to actual Clydebank itself, I was just wondering if there's any other developments that you believe that maybe your own club at Clydebank or other clubs in the Junior League should actually make available to, like, disabled fans like yourself in the future to make your experience better? For example, I've kind of looked into a little bit more about stuff like club SLOs and just about actually some of the facilities that they can provide for people. Obviously, that's on a higher spending scale. Maybe that I've recently all the drama with St Johnstone liaison officer getting attacked at Hampden the other week. But based on those kind of facilities as well, do you think that there's any that's maybe achievable for Clydebank and other teams in the league to bring in?
To be fair, I think there's a lot of things that can be easy wins for clubs and maybe not necessarily cost a lot. I know something that we did a couple of years ago was introduce sensory packs for like autistic fans and those with sort of sensory processing issues and whatnot. So we've got like packs that have got like ear defenders and fidget spinners and things that are going to help fans with those sort of sensory difficulties. You can put together a pack like that for a tenner, and if that makes someone's day far easier or they're able to come at all, then there are a lot of things that clubs can do if they're aware of it and they're willing to be open to it. Then I'm sure there are plenty of things that they can do that aren't going to compromise being able to buy that star striker.
No, that's great. I've genuinely never heard of the actual sensory packs themselves used at football. Is it something Clydebank, did you say, still do, or was it just for a time that maybe some fans were?
No, but we've still got them. As I said, they're not used very often, but just knowing that they're kind of there, it's something that we probably should publicise more. But as I say, just having those sort of different options for a different range of people is really important, I think.
No, that's great to hear that those are in. And honestly, I hope that just Clydebank continue to develop in that, and that you maybe even you'll have a say in what other facilities can come in the future, possibly to meet those other licensing fees. So, no, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So, obviously, I'd like to talk about before I finish the podcast. I'd like to actually talk about Clydebank and the team themselves as well. So, the team's actually had an incredible start to the season, winning all 5 of the league games so far, and beat a couple of tough opponents like Pollux and Caddocks and Darvel along the way. Did you actually think that the team would start off with 5 victories in a row against some of these teams?
In my dreams we did anyway. And that's the thing that I think everyone's really strengthened over the summers. I think a lot of people have seen, but you never really know how these things are going to go. We also made quite a few big signings that raised a couple of eyebrows and whatnot, but we have managed to strengthen kind of the spine of the team, which has been important. They all seem to have settled in and seem really good guys as well. So hopefully you're starting to see in the results that we're hopefully going to do okay this year.
No, brilliant. That's can I just ask as well? Sorry, who are the players that you've signed in this season as well, and kind of what sort of impact have they had in the squad so far?
Early days, but we managed to get Andy Leishman, who's probably the most decorated goalkeeper in this sort of level of football for a long time. Obviously had a lot of successful years at Talbot. And from Darvel we got Dean Cairns, we got David Syme, who was their captain. They both won the double with them last year. We also brought in young goalie Conor Keeney from Caledonian Braves. He looks pretty decent. He played in Saturday as well. So we're doing not too bad. And most recently was Keir Sampson, who no stranger to Talbot and Cumnock as well. So
no, it's brilliant that the standard of signings that are coming through in that as well, and that they got off to such a quick start as well, because I know it's easy enough to sit and say that teams maybe such as Darvel and Pollock are the tough games, but if I've learned anything from watching the games is that some of the ones that you least expect actually seem to be the more tougher games. But
100%, and especially this season, it's going to be dog eat dog. It's going to be so cutthroat. Teams will take points off each other, guaranteed.
No, I definitely agree. But even you've managed to avoid a slip up though in your last fixture when you battled a smaller team as such when you played Ardee or Thistle, but you won 4-0 away in the South Challenge Cup, the first round of that. That's managed to get you a place in the second round at home to second division side Caledonian Locomotives. That seemed like an eventful game for what I saw anyway. 4 red cards, 2 apiece, and it went to penalties, and just sounded like an absolutely wild game. But obviously you've got a bigger schedule. I was talking to Dino in the last episode about this as well, about the demand of teams at the junior level and how many cup competitions they need to play along with league games, and I say a lot of cancellations throughout the year as well, and it can continue a backlog. But you yourselves have got a home fixture away to East of Scotland Premier Division side St Andrews in the I can't say this word, I'll try it again, preliminary round of the Scottish Cup. And an equally tough away fixture away to West of Scotland First Division side Dawson Winton Rovers in the West of Scotland Football League Cup. Do you expect with this kind of demand the players that they're going to be able to kind of carry this impressive start to the league season over into the cup as well and try and keep that up throughout the season?
I mean, again, I would love to think so. We obviously had that sort of memorable run in the Scottish Cup a few years ago. We played Clyde, played Elgin, played Annan, and that brought some incredible memories, I should say. Also gone to the West final, but we know how hard it is to kind of compete in both the cups and the league as well. Like you tend to do sort of better in one rather than the other. But nothing wrong with being greedy and wanting to do well in both.
No, exactly. But when you were talking about some of the higher teams you played, like Clyde and Annan and the likes as well there, when you were watching those games, did you feel as if there was much of a difference? As I know that this is kind of thing that quite a lot of people discuss, whether the levels here people are good enough to try and compete when they actually get to League Two, even though I think the evidence is pretty much there that a lot of teams will fly right out the second division into the first. But did you really notice much of a difference yourself in quality?
I would say the Clyde game was probably one of the best performances I've seen of a Clydebank team in my time supporting the club. It was dominant. It could have been a couple more, which is, I didn't think I'd been saying that before the game. But where you then have the problem, or not the problem, but I would say it's then doing that over the season. That's probably where you're going to find the difference, the main difference. You can raise your game for 90 minutes, for 120 if you have to, but to be able to do that on a consistent basis over sort of 9 months or whatever, that would probably be where the telltale signs are going to be, just in that wee bit of quality. But I don't think there's that much of a difference. I think the gaps between our level and the SPFL, I think, is closing sort of year by year. And you're seeing the sort of players that are playing up and then dropping down, and vice versa. Like there's plenty going from, like, say, the low end, making the step up comfortably and then going again.
No, definitely, and that's it. I was talking again, in the last episode about this as well, about some of the standard of the clubs that are actually coming through, and they just make the Lowland League look like a piece of piss, really, just absolutely flying. Fair enough, there's a struggle there with the B teams and such, and now East Kilbride, the big spenders in the league as well, but Trinent's still up there, right out. You've seen Linlithgow come up there as well. This year, Broxburn, who's got off to a really good start as well. But I'm hoping that soon, whether it be yourself or the likes of Auchinleck Talbot or somebody, could just come up for the West of Scotland and actually prove that the side that rather close to home for me can actually compete at that level as well. Even though I've got no doubt in my mind that the likes of Beath and that would as well. So,
and I think once a couple of the West teams go up, I think they'll thrive in that division. But arguably, it's going to be getting out of the West, that's going to be probably the most difficult part of that whole process.
No, definitely. But I'll move on to the next bit now as well. So by the time that this podcast will actually be released, you'll have played Johnstone Borough, who recently got promoted this season, and they've got off to just a brilliant start as well, as quite a lot of the promoted teams have had this season. But they're only just one place behind you in second. Obviously, having played a game more and sitting at 3 points, but they've had 3 wins and 3 draws instead of the 5 wins which yous have had. What type of match are you expecting that to be? And do you think that the team will be able to overcome this confidence that they've got going to try to walk away with all 3 points and go up to 6 games unbeaten in the league?
I mean, I don't want to go all, well, I'm a manager, I'll take one game at a time. It's going to be a tough one, but it honestly is going to be. As you say, they've only just been promoted, but you take one look at their squad. They've got guys that played in the Premier League down south, and Graham Dordan's, Kyle Lafferty, who's had a career up here. It's peppered with guys who know this level as well and of real quality. So it's going to be really, really difficult. But as I say, I think every game this year is going to be like so tough. It's going to be unreal.
Just on a wee curveball question as well. Do you ever think, like, obviously there's 3 different teams come up every year as well, and quite a lot of them seem to do really well and actually push some of the teams that have been used to maybe playing at that higher level. Have you felt it's ever something that's Clydebank have maybe struggled with at times, is dealing with these promoted sides, or do you think that it's been pretty comfortable trying to actually get wins against them throughout the season?
Not really. I think it's been something that not even necessarily the newly promoted teams. It's always, it tends to be the teams who we should be beating, and I put that in sort of air quotes, that we've notoriously struggled with, and I'm talking that goes way back to our senior days, where we can go toe to toe with the sort of big club, so to speak, and then we slip up against someone who's bottom of the league or whatever. That's been sort of typical Clydebank for decades probably, but as I say, the quality of the teams coming up, like, it's not as if they're on a shoestring budget anymore. They're real powerhouses coming up and sort of establishing themselves in the top flight now.
No, exactly. And again, going on to the last episode where we talked about this, and he was talking about maybe clubs like Arthurlie and that as well, who have been a big name in the game, and he's very surprised to kind of see them drop out the league. But it's obviously just the standard of a lot of these teams that are coming up for the first division, and obviously they're not to be sitting looked at as if, you're going to be easy 3 points this season. It's just going to be a tough ride, and it could honestly be anybody that goes down.
There's absolutely nothing. There's no such thing as an easy 3 points now. Like there's no one who you think they're going to be gone by Christmas or anything like that. That won't happen this year, I don't think.
No, I can't see it myself either. But just to finish off as well, I'll talk about the last season quickly. And there, that he's actually finished 4th place in the West of Scotland Premier Division. I remember looking at one point that you were top of the league, and I thought, this could be Clydebank's season, but obviously newly promoted St Cadoc's side managed to just top you in goal difference in 3rd. Auchinleck had some unbelievable run, I think, right at the end of the season as well, to manage to get in 2nd, and as we've already discussed, Beast managed to retain their title for a 2nd year in a row, and just seem to be, again, just dominating the top dogs in the league. But just my final question I've got to ask you, do you think that this is the year that Clydebank are going to bring Beast's end of reign, their reign to an end at the top of the league and end it for them to get yourselves promoted?
Do I think so, or do I want that to be the case?
We'll go both.
I certainly want us to. I mean, it's no secret that is the next stage for us. That's when we reformed 2003, I think it was. The idea was always to play at the highest level that was that was like sustainable for us to do so, and obviously that's it's taken us a while to sort of be competitive and go toe to toe with the sort of teams at the top end of the Premier, and we're starting to hopefully to get to that point. I think the next stage is that a licensed club goes up from the West, and obviously I would love it to be us. So fingers crossed, we're on the right track.
Yeah, no, definitely. I say I've got no doubts in mind that you could definitely do it with the way that you started off the season, but I say it could be tougher going forward. But I'm looking forward to watching the league this season, and I hope that you actually do. Deep down, I hope that you do get promoted and be that first West of Scotland league team up. But no, honestly, I can't thank you enough, David, for joining us on the podcast tonight. It's been great to hear an insight about your disability, your actual working career as well, and also for Clydebank as well. A lot that I didn't know about there, so honestly, I can't thank you enough for coming on, mate.
Thanks for the invite, Jay.
Ajay. Can I just ask you as well before, if for anybody that's actually interested in maybe looking up your work as well, is there anywhere that they can, any websites or such where they can find that your work on the journalism and that for possibly a bit of inspiration or just a wee weekend read while they're having a pint?
I'll probably share some stuff on my Twitter, which is just David Brockett, and probably there's bits and bobs on LinkedIn. So if anyone's got any questions or whatever, they can pop us a message and I'll see what I can do.
No, perfect. Thanks again, David. Honestly, I appreciate it, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Good man, Jay. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. I'd like to thank you all once again for watching the podcast. If you did enjoy it and you'd like to see more, please follow and share the video on all social media platforms and all streaming platforms as well, which you can find in my Linktree bio, which I'll have put in the description of the podcast, and you can see within my bio on all my social media pages. As I spoke a little bit about in the podcast, I'll be putting links within the description for the Homeless World Cup. If you would like to try and watch any of the event or support it in any way possible, it would be much appreciated, and I do think it is a really good event which everybody should be supporting and will at least try to in any way that they feel they possibly can. As I discussed as well, I'll also be putting a link in the description to Scottish Para Football. This is where anybody who maybe feels as if they struggle with a disability and want to get involved within Scottish football, or maybe they just haven't found their place within the game yet, they can go to here for more information, or if you could please share it with anybody who would maybe like to get involved with it in any way by volunteering work, then it would be much appreciated if you could all check this out. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, whether that may be listening to it or watching it on YouTube. I really appreciate all the support, and I will see you again in the next episode. Take care.
Please don't try and run before you can walk.